tell you. Okay, there we go. So again, this is just done specifically for Eugene 4J. Not that I haven't used this as a skeleton PowerPoint for other districts, but I always do a review of their own input as well. So today we're going to talk about a little bit about what is PSO, the exit interview, the follow-up interview, getting started with the Post-School Outcomes 2.0 application itself, a brief overview of Eugene 4J input from last year's collection, some resources to share with you, and of course, I even want to say it'll be at the end, but a big thank you to all of you. So this is wordy, but what is PSO? Well, it's a mandatory collection that's been authorized since 2008. And it is the collection of those that graduated with a diploma or certificate, reached maximum age, dropped out, or were expected to return and didn't. So those are the criteria of your eligible students. And with the review, the list review that we're going to talk about further on down, this has already been done within your district, and I'm sure that was probably Joel's doing, of looking at those students and seeing whether they're eligible or not. It just gives you a heads up and a pre-session to look at the list before you start the input on June 6th, when the app will open, which is tomorrow already. So again, it is B14, higher education, competitive employment, other post-secondary education or training, and some other employment is what we're looking at to collect data on and use that. And it's used to improve special education services and inform your programs that you're already doing. So some of the resources that we have just regarding PSO alone on the website is like, what is PSO? It's a video. We have annual training opportunities, the 5 W's to PSO in the follow-up collection. Identify your PSO team, looking at Oregon PSO at a glance, and the guide for student and family if you ever want to send that out. So that is all about what is PSO. I want to mention the transition indicators. Within transition, there are 4 of them: graduation rates, dropout rates, post-school transition goals in the IEP. But the 4th one, indicator 14, is exactly what we just talked about, is the one that deals with post-school outcomes, PSO outcomes. So that's what this is all about. And it's looking to see what those students have done a year after exit. So let's start talking about the interviews. We've got, within the resources themselves, there's a district calendar. So you kind of can see how PSO lays out throughout the year, when you can do exit interviews, when the time is going to be open to do follow-up interviews, when things have to go to the state. All this data gets cleaned by us and we send it on to the state for SPP, and then you get it back at SPR&I. So that's what this is. So here are some things, 3 major tasks you can do before. One is, before the student exits or graduates, is to do an exit interview. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I can't even say enough how that will gather your data for contact information, which actually, when you do that and you do the exit within the app, all of that contact data totally moves into doing the follow-up. So you have it right in front of you. So after the student exits, what can you do? You look, like I said, in the spring around mid-April, and look at that list and see how it's going. You can also find out possibly if there are any missing students, and you can work with the ODE data team on that, and just prepare that list before the work really happens. So then 1 year after, that is when we complete the follow-up interview. And this year it's June 6th to September 30th. And at any time, if anybody has any questions, just let me know and we can stop. But I also have a section at the end, we can just talk about it too. So the exit interview, like I said, it is important, and I see it, working in schools as long as I have. It's really important to make that connection with the student before they leave. I remember especially my students in special education, they're afraid to leave. I mean, they've been in a place for so many years that have offered them support, and they're afraid to step out that door and not come back. So having this last conversation with them, or even if you do it maybe in your fall IEP, to have that contact with them to say, hey, what are your plans? What are you going to do? And at the end, tell them, hey, in a year's time, we're going to give you a call and have a little chat with you about what you've done this past year. So all of those can come together with that exit interview. The postcard that I have on here, that can be used too to send out right before you start doing them, like send them out the first part of May. We're going to start doing this collection. We just want to give you a heads up. And you make these where this is all highlighted here. You can make those your own from 4J or from a specific school. And those are found for you on the Transition Oregon website, which is right here. And I'll mention it a million times throughout, but those postcards are there for you to copy and send. So the one thing about this, of course, the exit interview is not mandatory, but you do have to have an agreement to participate, whether that's going to be, if they're 18 or better, they can do that themselves, or a parent has to have it because they're still in school. We have to have that consent. You can have them choose a staff member that they want to do that follow-up interview with. That gets denoted on there, and also that information follows forward. And like I said, all the contacts, that is probably the most important piece you can get out of it. And to me, the most important piece is making that connection with the student. And you can have them sign their own postcard, have them address the postcard to themselves, so they recognize that when it comes. And that was pretty much all I was going to say about the exit interview. I will tell you, with the data that I've taken over the past 5 years that I've been doing this, that the schools that do the exit interview are more successful with doing their follow-up too, because they've made that connection and the student knows. So the follow-up, again, it's still, who are the eligible students? And who are ineligible. So we've already gone through what the eligible students are, what we're looking at, but how about the ones that are ineligible? Maybe they're still in school, maybe they returned to school, maybe they've been out of school for less than 365 days, or they are deceased. And those are the ineligible that get marked on the list. They don't get taken off the list, they just get marked ineligible. And for those students that are missing and need to be added, again, I'll mention that you do that through the ODE data team through an email request. And it just, they are really prompt with their replies. They check everything on their end, and all of the 3 data collections that they do, like the June exit, Child Find, etc. And this will really help. So this is the list review, like we've already talked about, that's done. And we also have a document that can put you right through the whole follow-up list review. A step-by-step, it's just a 1-pager. We just added that. And this is the data team that I was talking about. And all you have to do is do the SSID number with a request of, you want this student added, or maybe they're at another school and they should be deleted, but that you contact. Okay, the follow-up. This is the mandatory collection like we've talked about. All of those that exited school and had services during the school year. And it's completed June through September. So in identifying your team, which I think you guys have already done, it's everything that you want the person who's going to confirm the collection that's complete, who's going to do the interviews, and who's going to maybe do the interviews and the input. Of course, we highly suggest that you do everything just through the app itself, because it saves a lot of your time if you just open up the app and it takes care of everything for you. So here we are on to the data collecting. This is the central login. This is what it looks like. This is the website to the login. You'll put your name and your email address in there, and you're going to log in with your password. You make up your own password. They have a specific one, and it's found on this site as well. Kind of takes you to it, but I think it's about 14 letters and numbers. Yes, Joel.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little point here. This is the central login, and many of you received an email inviting you into that yesterday. I asked Oscar Loriero, who's our data director, to add all of those names. There are a few people that are on the Zoom here today that were not added, and that's okay. I can make sure that you are added. I wanted to make you all aware that we have added several people. I think that one of the things that it says is that you need to access it within 24 hours. So hopefully, Cindy, you can talk a little bit about what if you have a little trouble logging in, that kind of thing, how to get help for that. And then for those that didn't receive an email yesterday, I'm going to try and make notes of some people that I noticed, like I think Kelly maybe and Ian Stoy are two people that I did not add to the list. I'm pretty sure I added Heather. So I'll try and make sure you're added to that list that Oscar is going to include. And if you find that you don't have access, send me an email and I'll ask Oscar to update the list.
Okay, so I did not know that was one of their requirements to do it within 24 hours of getting it. Huh. Maybe they just close all of those after 24 hours, but I wasn't aware of that, so I can't even speak to it. So I'll have to find out and see who they contacted ODE. And I'll try and get back to you with that by tomorrow.
It was no big
I
deal.
wasn't aware of that, because I thought on here too, I thought on here too, there was somewhere you could talk to, but I guess not. So I'll figure that out and get back to you on the login.
I don't know if it's helpful or not, but it sounds like some people's username sort of self-populated. Mine did not. And the username, I think that's kind of default is like my 4J address, just the lurch_s part without the @ or,
Right.
So it took a little go around to figure that out, but maybe everybody else is self-populated except mine. I don't know.
The other thing was, like, mine was expired. I just clicked on the thing that said it expired and it sent me a new link to my email. So it didn't slow me down creating the account. So
yeah, every year they expire. I have to go through that myself. So every time I use, in fact, it might even be every 6 months. So I think I have to go through it in December as well as in, well, May. I just did it again. So I'll try and find out those policies on the 24 hours and the populating of the sign on, the login, and get back to you as well. Okay, so the application, of course, I've already said this. We highly recommend just using the app itself. And I'll explain a little bit more as we go along, especially when we're looking at your data. if you do need the fillable PDF, nothing has been changed with the questions this year. On the app itself, we added some directions within one of them, just so you'd understand more, but the paper copy itself is the same questions. We hope to maybe make some edits to that by next year. This is, and maybe this is what I need to add to this, is if you have any problems connecting in, this is a step-by-step guide of getting into the app itself. And that's also on the website. So thanks for bringing that up. It's been a while, and that I've had those kind of questions. So I'll make sure that that's on there if you have any problems, who to contact. So let's look at 4J's information. This is the information from last year, the preliminary response rate, and that's taking like the total number of students and dividing it by how many contacts there were made. So about 68%, which actually is pretty decent for collection. And I'm gonna say when we find when we look further into this, you're going to know, and I think that number is going to change and improve when that happens. And here are the 4 engagement criteria. We have not engaged on here as well, but that's not reported. So it's the other employment, other training, higher ed, and competitively employed. Those are the ones that have to be reported. The state, Oregon, their targets are attempt to contact 100% on your list and complete the interview. They want 85%. And that's, you know, that also, if they're refused, that's a completed interview. So, and they would like 3 to 5 attempts on each student, if possible. Certainly, if you're going to get no contact on the first call on a, no longer in service of telephone, that's going to be no further action on that because you don't have any other contact. That's one thing I will say too with the exit interview. You can get contact like their cell phone, maybe a social site that they visit. You can do grandma's, maybe her telephone number or grandpa's telephone number, some kind of contact that the school doesn't necessarily have that you can add that will transfer over. So this is out of 245 eligible students. There no attempts 17. That's not a big deal. That's not a huge percent, 7%. So that's really good. Refused, there were 27%. That seems a little high, 67%, or excuse me, 67 in number. 99 interviewed though, that's a lot. 41% of them were interviewed. And then we had 25% or 61 of them were no further action, which is mostly contact. It could be the no answer, message left. They just don't want to do anything coming from the school. But if you give them a heads up, that's a possibility they might do that. I made this little graphic just so you can see what we're working with. And I didn't list the school sites, but I will tell you one of these, which is just the whole school district itself, which had 61. Of those, 21 of them were interviewed. So in that case, I mean, I worked with Lori a lot, and she did the school district one before she retired. And hers were really difficult to get a hold of because you're going to have dropouts, kids that maybe are homeschooled, through the district somehow. And those are the most difficult one to reach. So that's when I knew the reasoning behind this one. You've got one here with 27 students and only 11 of them were interviewed. So this is what I'm here to maybe look at the data which you input and see if I have any helpful hints or suggestions. And that's what we're going to look at. So I tried to cover up things because I don't want to point fingers and I want to be helpful with this. But for instance, the first example here, a refusal was done correctly. It was a refuse. And it was stated that it was not completed from a paper copy. No, it wasn't a paper copy, meaning it went directly input. The interviewer was a teacher, but two different names were on the input. So I didn't quite understand that. But if you have multiple people working on one student, there's a high degree of error. You've got a teacher who did the interview, and I'm going to probably say it was on paper because otherwise they'd be doing it through the app. So on paper, somebody else does the input, and then somebody else tries to follow up on that. So in that respect, you're going to find a higher degree anyway of error. The second one, don't wait too long. It's best to do this early. I saw quite a few of them, and I understand September is a horrible month for all teachers. I mean, getting started, you never have time in the day, and then you have to do a collection on top of it. So I know Joel is thinking of workarounds on that, which he has. And I think that's wonderful because this is what you don't want to see. One contact, wrong contact or no contact information at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the 29th when it closes. And that was the only attempt. And this one, no answer, same thing. So that's when you want to think, okay, could I have done this earlier? Now, if this was multiple attempts and you tried one more time on the last day, kudos to everyone, but we don't know that because this was the only attempt in the system. So next slide. Oop. This one was entered in as a refusal. Are you, the student, family, or other contact, willing to answer a few questions? Apparently no. But then when I got to the post interview, the answer was no person interviewed, because it probably should have been not a refusal, because you have to hear that from a person. That's going to be either the student or their family member saying, no, I don't want to do this. A hang up is not a refusal. You have to hear somebody say it. Now, if you get the case where somebody's going to start yelling some expletives at you, that is one that you want to do probably no further action on, because you don't want to get their ire up and try and recall on that one. But use your own discretion on that, on how you do that. But we don't expect you to hear that all over again and get them more upset by doing that. But a hang up is not a refusal, and neither is this. It was probably no contact information somehow, some way. So you cannot not have a person to interview and get a refusal. It has to be a person. And I'm going to tell you, this was a statewide problem. And I don't know why that is, but and it has all the explanations and directions right in here. If no person was interviewed, you know, it shows you what to select on question B and go, and it's going to be a will not complete.
Can I ask a quiz question?
Sure.
Because I did a bunch of phone calls and so forth last year. One of the things we ran into is people screening their phones for numbers they don't recognize.
Yes.
And so I would get a text back saying, please don't call me. And so I wasn't really sure because I didn't know exactly who was texting me back. I couldn't say, oh, it was a family member, it was the student. I didn't know. And I would reply to that text because I was calling from a work phone. But I think that's one of the problems, at least I ran into last year.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure about that one either. A don't call me back might in a text.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's the message you received back.
Mm-hmm.
Note that in the notes.
But what do we put in terms of the response on the form?
Um, yeah, that's a hard one because at first I'd say that was a refusal
Correct.
because they didn't say it out loud, but they did it in writing.
Yeah.
Um, let me find out for sure on that one.
Okay.
Would you ever so Heather, you didn't text back again with like, this is so and so from the school district?
I actually did, but they still refused. They still were like, please don't bother me. I don't want to answer the questions.
Yeah, yeah.
But they
That
didn't
seems
say
like
who they were. They just didn't want to be.
if I had seen something like that in the cleanup, actually, that you had texted and they texted back to say, don't bother me, and they knew who it was from,
Mhm.
that's a refusal.
Okay.
And, but we'd appreciate if you put those on, the very last notes is
Mhm.
on the post interview.
Yeah.
Because when you say no person interviewed, I guess you could do other
Okay. Just put
and
other, just
put
say refusal.
received in a text response of a refusal.
Okay. That's fine.
And then you could note that as well, because the notes happen right after this. And then that way we would take it as a refusal.
Okay. Because that did happen.
Okay.
Thanks.
Did that happen a lot?
Not a lot, but a couple of times.
Okay.
I'd say at least 2 times.
Okay. Because that's the first time I'd heard of it. So that was good to be brought up, and I'll bring that up with our team.
I just feel like these days people are much more cautious about, I mean, they're not necessarily, even if you do a
Totally.
preschool interview, they're not necessarily going to have the number
Yes.
in their phone.
Yeah, the fact that you texted back and said who it was, and they still responded that way, then that's definitely a refusal.
Okay, thanks.
And then the next one, again, I found out that are you entering data from a paper copy? Do you all understand that? So the paper copy is the paper interview that somebody may have done an interview, whether it's face-to-face or what, and wanted to use paper instead of the computer. So there were a lot of them that I checked into, and I didn't check all 245 of them, but I checked quite a few. And the interviewer, and again, the person inputting was different. So I don't understand why the person who's inputting would not understand it was a paper copy, though.
I have a thought on that, Cindy.
Okay.
Sometimes if it's a classified staff that's entering information, they might feel a need to list the case manager teacher who is, responsible for that student. So they might list the teacher with them, even though it was the classified staff that actually did all the things. But they may have asked the teacher some questions or consulted a little bit. That's just a thought, because, I've never done these interviews, but I always had a Voc training assistant that helped me with them, and I'll probably start doing them. But it's also possible that classified staff will do some of it with me. We might be in the same room,
Yeah.
It's just a thought.
Yeah, that's a great thought. And I guess what I would do is if you did have somebody help you out with this, is just let them know that they are entering the information from a paper copy, and who did the interview is fine. And that's fine. But what we're seeing is the no's. I mean, if I had a yes here and it was one person doing the interview and one person inputting, I would totally respect that and understand it. But if we've got multiple people getting into the app with this, which I saw the most was 3, you probably need to cut that down. And the question specifically is who did the interview? So it's luckily it's not too confusing, but I can totally understand what you're saying, that they want to put a responsible person there and not themselves. I get that. So, and one last one, and this was not, I checked quite a few of your answers on this one, and you all seem to understand it. I myself didn't understand it very well, so I asked if we could put something more on this, and we haven't yet. This is this third one. Where was the job? And an employer in your community with and without disabilities, military, etc. Small group in the community with 2 to 8 individuals and paid minimum wage. So this is what Voc Rehab used to call an enclave. This means it's a small group that typically consists of a group of individuals with disabilities working together under the supervision of an agency employee. So that, to me, that answer does not describe that. So if you go forward and you see that, it's not like somebody working at, let's say a small business that only employs 8 people total. And sometimes there's only 3 of them there. So you're thinking that's a small group in your community, right? But that's not the case. That would be an employer in your community. So this is a group of students that are working together under a supervision of somebody else. If that question ever comes up, I happen to not see that selected with many of yours that I checked. But just so you know, when we cleaned it, we had to go back then to the interviewer. That's why we keep the name of the interviewer and ask which one did you, if you were given the information that this student works at maybe a Subway, right? And that's going to probably have less than 8 employees at one time. And you don't want to read these to the student at all. Read them yourself. No, certainly we know if they're going to work at Fred Meyer's or Walmart, it's the employer in your community, and you'll be able to answer that. But this is for you to read and ask them, have a conversation with the student. What do you think, this is? If they list a business, maybe working at an auto shop, so you have to kind of work with them, but I am afraid because we've had a lot of don't know and no answer, that this whole list has been read to the student. And I have to say, if I got to the bottom of somebody reading this list to me, I'd say, I don't know. I don't know. I would not want this whole list read to me. So go ahead. Take your time with this one, know what those answers are, and have the conversation with the student about where that job is. So let's go on. There's not much more. I'm not going to get through. These are tips. Of course, utilize the exit interview and postcards. Do the student review list, which is great. I just checked the last one on Monday, and about 30% of districts statewide use the review. I think if they really knew it was there and would do it to prepare, it would be great for them, but that's the way it is. Again, email the ODE data team if there are any changes to add, delete, or questions of eligibility, because we get those all of the time. Use the PSO app. I can't say that more for the interview. Easier, more secure. No need for duplicated efforts. Start the follow-up early. Refusals can only be if you're speaking or texting with somebody. Check for PSO webs or resources on the website. There's a lot of them there. Even a telephone script, step-by-step guide, the calendar, the postcard, etc. The PSO team's here to help you, definitely. I get questions all the time. You guys gave me some new ones, so that's great. We'll have our final session if you have, want to hear a group. We're going to have an open mic on August 29th. If you have some questions going into the final month of this, we're going to have that at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's posted on the website as well. I think, Joel, you sent how to navigate the PSO to everybody, right?
Yeah, I did. I did not send this slideshow yet because I wanted to make sure I didn't send it before you shared it.
Yeah, no,
Um,
that's great.
Also, I wanted to talk about some of the district things that we're trying to do to support this. If I can, is this a
Oh,
good
yeah, you
moment to do
have
that?
to do that.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things I think I mentioned in the emails that I've sent. One of them is that special education teachers can get paid extended contract if they're doing this work outside of the school day. You're not required to do that, but I'm just offering that to you as a resource if you're strapped for time. And remember, the deadline for this is September 30th. It's not June 17th. So if you end up doing it during your contract year and it's after school, for example, I can pay you extended contract for the time that you spend in the next, eight work days or so. And I will also be able to pay you extended contract if you do it outside of your workday in the fall through September 30th, or in the summer. If you decide, hey, I want to do a little bit of this work, I've got an hour or so, I want to give some students a call that I'm thinking about. I'm totally fine with that.
Joel,
in
can I
ad-
ask a quick question? Sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Just to find out if that applies to teachers, if they need to, like, what about those? I'm just trying to think about, I feel like we're gonna get better responses if we do the kind of interview before the year before. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what you call that, where you kind of make sure you have a contact information.
The exit
Oh, you mean do
interview.
the exit?
Yeah, that's
interview?
what I'm thinking
Uh-huh.
about.
Yeah, right now we're in the phase of post-school outcomes.
Okay.
And I haven't checked in with Seth about approving, folks doing exit interviews like in the school year, but I
Mhm.
can look into that. Right now, I think I have approval to provide extended contract to do the follow-up interviews at this
Okay.
point.
That sounds good.
Yeah, so I can do that. And the other thing I'll say about that is that a lot of our transition specialists in high schools are still doing exit interviews, or they did exit interviews throughout this school year, even though our funding stream has changed.
Mhm.
So that's the other reason why we're doing some of these adjustments. And I'm not sure how many people that are on this Zoom call understand that, but we've had a shift in the YTP funds. So we were always provided funds from vocational rehabilitation, but they have stipulated the way that we collect hours for students and the way we serve students in a different way than what we had before. Previously we would have to try and serve a certain quota of students by entering them and doing intakes with Voc Rehab. And that quota is no longer relevant. And now Voc Rehab is emphasizing what are called pre-ETs, which I think most people know on this Zoom call, which are pre-employment transition skills, right? So the YTP specialists or transition specialists, as they're called now, in all of our high schools are submitting data directly to Oregon Department of Human Services, and they're getting approval to provide the services for students. So they're paid directly from hours that are approved for serving the students that we see as necessary for that. And so something that's been fuzzy in the past is the differences between IDEA transition and voc rehab transition. And so part of what is happening now is the state is making a clear delineation between what work is done for supporting IDEA transition and what is done with voc rehab. So that's sort of the reason why some of these changes are being made and why teachers need to help with that. Now, our classified staff can also continue to help. So if you're not paid directly as a transition specialist, or you're not paid out of that pot of money, you can continue to help support teachers with this work. But the district has seen transition specialists do this in the past, and we're sort of shifting that responsibility back to our teachers to make sure that it gets done, which is a change. But what's not a change is that all of our staff can help to do the work. If you're strapped for time and you need to ask classified staff to help you with that, they can support you with it. But ultimately, we want to see these numbers get to 85% this year. And that's why we're trying to make sure that everyone understands this ahead of the game. So I mentioned the piece around extended contract, which is possible for our licensed staff. And then the other thing that is another incentive is we're able to support like parties, so sort of like alumni events. So if you want to have an alumni event for your students in your school, we can pay for a party. There's one high school right now that is taking advantage of that, and the high school is going to run a party at Ready One. And they're going to invite students to go bowling and play video games and hang out with each other and have pizza. It's paid for by the district, and that's going to be an opportunity for the staff involved in that to ask questions and be able to get those interviews done in person, which is kind of a fun way to do it. Last fall, we incentivized some of the interviews with gift cards to Starbucks. And so we gave every student who participated in that a Starbucks gift card, and we'll continue to do that. So if you want to provide an incentive to your students, the district will also pay for $5 gift cards for students that want to have a free drink. So those are some of the things that we're trying to do to up our numbers and support staff in doing this work, which is a change for many.
Absolutely. Thanks for saying all of that and giving the incentives. And I know other districts have done the same thing and have used like in-service week when the teachers aren't busy to bring those kids back on campus when no other students are there, but the teachers are, to have that pizza party and do it. Of course, it just adds to your start, but if you're going to do this in September anyway, it's a good way to maybe do the hanging on ones that you haven't been able to locate yet.
One other thing, I did share a document that it was directly pulled from the dashboard. And so I've shared that with all of the staff so they have access to that and they see the list of students. And one of the things that Cindy talked about was trying to avoid sort of redundancy for our students of having more than one person contacting a student. So I think it is important that if you see a name on a list, on that list, and you as the case manager think that you're not going to be able to reach out to that student because you just do not have enough time, that we assign who is going to contact that student so that we know who it's going to be, and then we take care of all of that so that there's not that problem, and we know who's going to make the call or make the attempted contacts.
Great. Well, I know it's getting past the end of your day, so I only have a couple of slides left. This one is hot off the press. I just made it last week, so it's already up on the website. It will take you through every one of the buttons or icons within the app, and it'll give you a description. And it's all done alphabetically by the name of the button. So I hope that's helpful for you. These are all of the resources, and I'm gonna send, because I added a couple of things. I'll send you the PDF of this again if you want to send that out or do whatever you want with it, and we'll get that. But these are your resources for PSO, the main ones. Now, I should have put this help one in a few times. Anybody have any lasting questions? I know you'll think of them. All you have to do is email me. It's great, or call me. It's all good. And the last, I just want to say thank you and give you this, beautiful picture to look at and think, this is what you'll get to see it on October 1st. And ours is just starting, but anyway. So no other questions? I think you guys are really lucky that you have the administration that you do that's fully supporting this. And we certainly appreciate that. And you guys for all the work you do, because I know what that's like. So like I said, you can call me anytime and that'd be great. And I'll find these out and I'll get the answers sent off to Joel. The login and the text. I want to talk about that for sure with our team.
Okay,
But
thank you,
okay.
Cindy. Yeah,
I'll get the contact for ODE who you need to check with login efforts. Great. Thank you so much.
sounds good. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And I'll make sure to get out the video recording to any of your colleagues who missed this tomorrow. So I've got it on my computer now, and I just have to take a quick look at it and make sure it's all good and send it off. And I'll also send off the PowerPoint too. So Cindy, if you want to send the final PowerPoint to me today, that would be great so I can get it out to the team tomorrow.
I will do that.
Thank you. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
thank you.
Bye, everyone.